The signal arrived on a Tuesday. It chose the night shift. Of course it did. The universe has a flair for the dramatic. Dr. Aris Thorne was watching the readings. He was mostly watching his eyelids droop. The coffee in his mug had gone cold. It was his third mug of the night. The observatory was quiet. A gentle hum of machines filled the air. Aris was tracing constellations on his screen. Then a new line appeared on his monitor. It was not a jitter. It was not a cosmic burp from a distant star. It was a perfect, clean spike. It held for a second, then blossomed. Data flooded the system. It was intricate. It was beautiful. It moved with the kind of logic that made mathematicians weep. This was not noise. This was music. Aris sat bolt upright. His cold coffee was completely forgotten. He ran the diagnostic program 3 times. Each time, the result was the same. The signal was artificial. It was a structured message from deep space. It was layered with physics and prime numbers. It was a greeting card from beyond the void. A very, very smart greeting card. For a moment, he felt an overwhelming smallness. Then he felt an overwhelming excitement. He picked up the phone. The world needed to wake up. The call from a sleepy observatory changed the world. Within an hour, global leaders were awake. They were gathered in secure digital rooms. The long-dormant first contact protocol was activated. General Ava Rostova oversaw the proceedings. Her face was granite. She saw every possible threat. Every worst-case scenario played out behind her eyes. Her job was to protect humanity from itself. Now she had to protect it from the stars. Across the virtual table was Dr. Kenji Tanaka. He was a man who studied dead languages. Now he faced the ultimate living one. He argued for caution, but a different kind. Rostova prepared for war. Tanaka prepared for a conversation. He urged them to remember their own history. Every first contact had been messy, full of misunderstandings. He wanted this one to be different. The protocol was a thick book of dust and fear. It had chapters for plagues and invasions. It had plans for planetary evacuation. A few pages at the back mentioned peaceful exchange. Rostova focused on the front of the book. The world's militaries went on a silent, high alert. Missiles were warmed up in their silos. Fleets slipped out of their ports. On the surface, the world was calm. Beneath it, a planet held its breath. Humanity tried to decode the signal. They threw their best minds at the puzzle. They assembled supercomputers to chart its patterns. They made progress. They found star charts. They found biological data. They found what looked like a dictionary. It seemed the senders wanted to be understood. It was a gesture of immense confidence, or perhaps immense arrogance. They were giving humanity the tools to comprehend its own insignificance. But there was no time. The signal was only the knock on the door. The guests were already on the porch. They arrived without warning. Not with a fiery entry into the atmosphere. Not with a slow crawl from the edge of the system. One moment, the space above Earth was empty. The next, it was not. Space-time itself seemed to fold open. The fleet simply appeared. It was a magic trick on a cosmic scale. The ships were enormous. They defied human engineering. They were obsidian shapes against the stars, hexagons and pyramids and impossibly sharp lines. The largest was a mothership. It was the size of a small moon. It blotted out the sun for entire continents. Cities fell into its sudden, terrifying shadow. Every satellite, every telescope, every backyard astronomer looked up in awe and in profound, bone-deep fear. The ships formed a perfect grid around the planet. They moved with silent, unnerving precision. It was not an orbit. It was a cage. Humanity's own warships were specks of dust by comparison. The most advanced fighter jet looked like a child's toy. This was not a meeting of equals. This was a force of nature. This was a god descending from the heavens. And it did not look merciful. Then they spoke. The message was not sent to a government. It was not sent to a military base. It was sent to everyone. Every television screen flickered. Every radio hissed. Every phone in every hand came to life. The broadcast seized control of the entire planet. Your favorite cat video was replaced by a new, less fluffy overlord. The voice was harsh. A series of deep, guttural commands. Humanity's translation software worked frantically. It pieced together the meaning from the data in the first signal. The words were simple. They were brutal. This world is now the property of the Cathar Empire. The voice was filled with ancient, unshakable pride. Your compliance is mandatory. Your resistance is an expected and welcome amusement. There was no room for negotiation. It was the voice of a predator. The screen showed images. They were not subtle. Worlds of fire and glass, cities reduced to black husks, towering monuments to Cathar victory. They showed other species, beings of light and crystal and flesh, all of them in chains, all of them kneeling before their conquerors. The message was clear. We have done this before. We will do it again. Surrender and serve, or die and be forgotten. They expected fear. They expected the world to break. In the secure rooms, panic bloomed. General Rostova slammed her fist on the table. "This is a declaration of war," she said. Her voice was cold steel. "They want us to kneel. I say we make them bleed." Her finger hovered over the order to launch. She wanted to show them that Earth was not some soft target, that humanity had teeth. It might be a suicidal gesture, but it would be a defiant one. Dr. Tanaka shook his head slowly. "General, they have shown us images of broken worlds." His voice was calm amidst the storm. "Those worlds fought back. They used weapons. They bared their teeth, just as you want to do." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And the Cathar broke them. It is what they expect. It is the only game they know how to play." He proposed something insane. "Let's not play their game. Let's play ours." What could they possibly lose? The choice was stark. Annihilation with a bang, or annihilation with a whimper. Tanaka offered a third option. A whisper, a question. The leaders of the world argued, but the logic was undeniable. The Cathar were ready for a fight. They were not ready for what came next. Humanity's reply was prepared. It was not a weapon. It was a mirror. The broadcast began. It went out on all frequencies. A single focus beam aimed at the mothership. It started not with a threat, but with a sound, the steady, rhythmic beat of a human heart. Then came the music. Not a war anthem. It was the soaring, complex beauty of Bach's cello suites. It was the soul of humanity rendered in sound, a testament to sorrow and joy. Images followed the music. They showed no weapons, no armies, no cities braced for war. They showed a child taking its first step, a scientist peering into a microscope, the swirling double helix of DNA. They showed artists painting, dancers leaping, people laughing together. They showed the raw, messy, beautiful truth of human existence. The broadcast ended with a question. Not a plea, a question. A series of mathematical proofs, followed by an image of the cosmos. The message was simple. This is what we are. This is what we love. Who are you? On the bridge of the Cathar flagship, Fleetmaster Kalen watched. He was a creature of war. His ancestors had conquered 1,000 worlds. He had conquered 100 himself. He understood violence. He understood fear. He understood the clean, simple logic of power. He did not understand this. His second-in-command, Vorlag, growled. "It is a trick, Fleetmaster, a primitive attempt at misdirection." Kalen remained silent. He watched the strange images. The small, soft creatures seemed to be celebrating their own fragility. They showed their young, their art, their endless, pointless questions about the universe. He had seen the reply of 100 other species. They always sent the same things: threats, images of their warriors, pleas for mercy. They always revealed their weapons or their fear. What is the tactical value of this? Music. Vorlag muttered. He found the sounds irritating, disordered. And this equation. They solve a problem and then present it as a gift? Why? The entire bridge crew was confused. Conquest was a ritual. A script followed for millennia. First, the show of force. Second, the demand for surrender. Third, the terrified reply. Fourth, the subjugation. These humans were not following the script. It was deeply unsettling, like a prey animal smiling at the hunter. Humanity's broadcast was a masterpiece of hope. It was a message in a bottle thrown at a tidal wave. Dr. Tanaka knew it was the longest of shots. The final part of the message was the most dangerous. It was a direct, open invitation. The words appeared on the Cathar screens, rendered in their own harsh, angular script. "We do not understand your purpose, but we are willing to learn. Send an envoy. Let us meet. Let us speak as equals." The word equals was the true gamble. To the Cathar, nothing was equal. There was only the strong and the weak, the conqueror and the conquered. To suggest equality was the highest form of insult, or the highest form of bravery. General Rostova hated it. "We're inviting them to land, to walk right up to our front door." She signed off on it anyway. There were no better options left on the table. The world waited. The invitation hung in the void between the planet and the fleet. The great dark ships remained silent. Their cage held firm. For hours, nothing happened. The tension was a physical thing, a pressure on the chest of every person on the planet. They had offered curiosity. Now they would see if it was answered with conversation or with fire. The War Council of the Cathar was a storm of outrage. The chamber echoed with angry, guttural shouts. "Equals," roared Warlord Grask. His fists were the size of small asteroids. "The primitives insult us. They invite the blade to their own throats." He slammed his armored hand on the central command table. The metal groaned in protest. "We should burn their world for this arrogance." Others agreed. Their entire culture was built on a simple truth. Might makes right. The strong rule. The weak serve. Diplomacy was a tool for the feeble. A way for the powerless to beg for scraps. For a species with no star fleet to propose a meeting of equals, it was absurd. It was like an insect demanding a parley with the boot about to crush it. One of the younger commanders even made a joke. A rare thing on a Cathar warship. Perhaps they wished to offer us a great deal on planetary insurance. But Fleetmaster Kalen saw something else. He played the human message again. He focused on the face of the man who spoke, Dr. Tanaka. There was no fear in his eyes. There was a deep, weary calm, and an intense, burning curiosity. This was not the posture of the weak. This was something else entirely. "They offer no tribute," Kalen said, his voice cutting through the noise. "They make no pleas. They show us their art and ask us to speak. This is not weakness." He looked at his council. "This is a puzzle. and I will not destroy a puzzle before I have understood it. The fleet master made his decision. It was a violation of protocol. It was a risk. But his curiosity now rivaled that of the humans below. He would send an emissary. He did not have diplomats. The Cathar Empire had no need for them. So he would send what he did have. A warrior. The greatest warrior in his fleet. A symbol of Cathar power. He chose Zilar, champion of the Bloodied Nebula. A warrior who had never known defeat. A single ship detached from the fleet. It was not a troop transport. It was a diplomatic vessel. By Cathar standards, that meant it had slightly fewer cannons. It was a shard of polished obsidian. It sliced through the atmosphere with a terrible grace. It did not burn. It simply pushed the air aside. On the ground, every human watched. This was it. The moment of truth. Was this ship a messenger? Or was it the planet's executioner? The world held its breath as one. The meeting place was the Atacama Desert. It was one of the driest places on Earth. Nothing lived there. It was as neutral a ground as the planet could offer. The human delegation was small. Dr. Tanaka was at its head. He wore a simple gray suit. He looked more like a professor than an ambassador to the stars. With him were three others, a biologist, a physicist, and a poet. An odd welcoming committee for an alien conqueror. General Rostova watched from a bunker miles away. Her hand was on a red button. Snipers were hidden in the rocks. Satellites watched from above. She hoped for the best. But she was a student of history. She prepared for the worst. The Cathar ship landed without a whisper. Its technology was beyond sound itself. A ramp lowered, carving a sharp black line in the desert sun. Then Zylar appeared. The poet in the human delegation gasped. He was a giant. A being of pure, intimidating presence. He stood at least 9 feet tall. His armor was a dark, iridescent metal. It seemed to drink the light. He carried a long staff that hummed with energy. He was a walking mountain of war. He stepped onto the sand and looked at the humans. He expected to see them flinch, to see them bow. He saw 4 small creatures, unarmed, watching him with wide, curious eyes. Dr. Tanaka took a step forward. He did not bow. He gave a slight nod, a gesture of respect between equals. "Welcome to Earth," he said. His voice was steady. It was carried by a small speaker. Zilar's helmet translated the words. The greeting was unexpected. He was prepared for pleas, for offerings of tribute, for the panicked babbling of a doomed species. He was not prepared for simple, polite hospitality. Tanaka did not offer gold or land. He offered knowledge. He activated a small holographic projector. A star chart sprang to life in the air between them. It showed a spinning pulsar. "This star emits an unusual radiation pattern," Tanaka explained. "We have a theory about its core composition. We would be honored to hear yours." He gestured to the biologist. She presented a holographic model of the human genome, a gift of their most fundamental secrets. Zilar stood motionless. He was a warrior. His mind was trained for combat, for strategy, for anticipating an enemy strike. He had no training for this. This was not a surrender. It was a seminar. The physicist offered a new, elegant proof for a complex theorem. The poet recited a short verse about the beauty of a sunrise. "This is your tribute?" Zilar's voice boomed. It was a low rumble, like rocks grinding together. "You offer me poems and puzzles?" Dr. Tanaka smiled gently. "This is not tribute. This is our introduction. This is who we are." The emissary, Zilar, was profoundly shaken. He had faced down entire fleets without flinching. He had walked through fields of fire. But this quiet conversation in the desert unnerved him. He listened as the humans spoke of their philosophy, their strange ideas about discovery for its own sake, their belief in cooperation. The concept of mutual growth was utterly alien to him. The Cathar did not grow with others. They grew by consuming them. He tried to understand them through a warrior's lens. He saw their physical weakness, their lack of natural armor, their slow breeding cycle. By every Cathar metric, they were a failed species. Yet they had survived. They had thrived. They had reached for the stars with nothing but their fragile minds. "You speak of art," Zilar said. "What is its function? How does it help you conquer?" The poet simply replied, "It helps us conquer despair." Zilar had no words for this. The Cathar had no art. They had trophies. They had monuments to victory, built from the rubble of their enemies. They had no songs, only war chants. The seed of doubt planted in his mind began to sprout. He saw humanity's weakness, but he also saw its strength. A strength not measured in warships or cannons, a resilience rooted in ideas. It was a power he could not fight. He could not even comprehend it. The meeting concluded. Zilar returned to his ship. He left the desert with a mind full of dangerous new thoughts. He returned to the Cathar mothership. He walked through the cold, metal halls. He passed warriors who nodded to him in respect. They saw him as a champion, a symbol of their unbending power. He felt like a fraud. He felt like a man who had just learned the world was not flat. He stood before Fleetmaster Kalen and the War Council. The air was thick with expectation. They waited for a report on the primitives' weakness, on their readiness to be conquered. Zilar removed his helmet. He looked his leader in the eyes. "They are not weak," he said. The words fell like stones into a silent pond. Their power is not in their ships. It is not in their bodies. It is in their minds. The council chamber stirred. Warlord Grask let out a contemptuous snort. Zilar ignored him. "They do not fear us," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "They do not see us as gods, or as conquerors." He paused, delivering the most shocking blow. "They see our empire, our traditions, our conquests." He looked at each member of the council. "And they pity us." The room erupted in fury. Pity? The mighty Cathar Empire? Pitied by soft, tiny creatures from a world of mud? It was the ultimate insult. Fleetmaster Kalen raised a hand. The chamber fell silent. He had the full recordings from Zylar's armor. He had listened to every word of the exchange. He had watched the human faces. He had seen their strange, fearless curiosity. He had spent his life following a single path. The path of conquest. It was the only way the Cathar knew. They took what they wanted. They destroyed what they could not take. For millennia, it had worked. It had built them an empire that spanned the galaxy. But now he saw the truth in Zilar's report. The humans were not afraid. They were sad for the Cathar. They saw a species trapped in an endless cycle of violence, a people who had forgotten how to learn. The Cathar Empire had expanded, but it had not grown. It had not changed in 10,000 years. It only consumed, like a fire. Humanity, for all its weakness, offered something more, something his people had lost long ago, a chance to discover something new. He faced the great choice, the old way, or a new path. The ships in the sky began to move. On Earth, people watched in terror. Was this the end? Had the invitation been rejected? The perfect, menacing grid of the Cathar Armada shifted. The ships pulled away from one another. The dark cage around the world broke apart. But they did not form an attack pattern. They reformed into a new shape, a wide, open spiral, a shape that mirrored the galaxies they both inhabited. It was not a posture of aggression, it was a gesture of openness. A new message arrived. It was not broadcast to the entire planet. It was a tight beam sent directly to the Atacama Desert, to Dr. Tanaka's team. It was not a demand. It was not a threat. It was a puzzle, a hugely complex mathematical problem, an equation that had troubled Cathar star science for centuries. It was a question they could not answer on their own. Attached to the data was a short, simple text. The words were still harsh. The tone was still guttural. But the meaning was new. The meaning was a revolution. It said, "You claim to value knowledge. Prove it." Then a final line appeared, a line that changed the future of two species, a line that started a new dawn. Help us solve this. Humanity had looked to the stars and offered curiosity. And the stars, for the first time in 1,000,000 years, had answered with a question of their own.